I think we have some time for some questions. So I think if people want to raise their hands, and then we have some microphones around. I think I saw one hand up there first.
Thanks for being here today. My name's Shana Kadada. I'm the head of the Guantanamo Litigation Project at the
Thank you. I was going to ask everybody to
Constitutional
introduce
Rights.
themselves and identify their affiliation. Thank you.
And thanks again for being here and for hosting this. My question for you is this. The biggest obstacle to closing Guantanamo has been the Defense Department's, we believe, very inflated stats about return to terrorism among people released by the Bush administration. Their claim that almost 50 people have gone back to hostile activities, a claim which you repeated this month. Our statistics are more like under half a dozen people who've gotten involved in anything approaching criminal activity. So my question for you is, what explains the gulf? And if we don't know, would you commit to sitting down with myself and Professor Denbo, who've done a number of studies on this and all have security clearances and could do it in a classified setting, to iron out our differences in terms of individual names?
Okay, thank you. In the previous administration, I think there were about 532 individuals from Guantanamo who were transferred. And in this administration, we have transferred 48, so that brings you up to about 580. In a recent, very rigorous interagency review that looked at all intelligence sources, it was determined that the recidivism rate of those who are known or suspected to have re-engaged in violent extremism comes out to 20% or so. Slightly under, well, 20%. And that's broken down, I think it's 9.6% of those who are confirmed, or 10.6 and 9.4 suspected. This is based on all available intelligence information. Is the number inflated? It's very difficult to get precise figures on that. People sometimes use that figure, 20%, and say, oh my goodness, 1 out of 5 detainees return to some type of extremist activity. You know, the American penal system, the recidivism rate is up in about 50% or so as far as return to crime. 20% isn't that bad. Yet we know that many of those detainees have returned and have engaged in not just extremism, but terrorist attacks. It is something that we have to look at very carefully. We have tried to put in place in this administration a more rigorous review on the transfers. There remain about 190 or so detainees in Guantanamo. Hopefully, all those individuals will be transferred or will go into prosecution either under Article 3 or military commission. I'd be happy to take your information and relay it to the people who follow this very closely. But I think it was a very thorough review, and again, it's broken down to between those known and suspected. So the number of known recidivists on terrorism is about 10%. Yes.
My name is Omar Shaheen. I'm the Public Relations Director for Islamic Relief and the Chairman of North American Imams Federation. First, I would like to thank you for your comments about Islamic Relief. We as a Muslims community, I'll be honest as always, like always, and direct to the point. We as a Muslims community, we live in this country and we love this country. Actually, this country loves on us. Muslims community, like any other community, came to this country to enjoy justice and freedom. We feel that after September 11, we are not enjoying these great values anymore. Also, we feel that there is a big lack of trust between Muslims community and our government. My question is, there is anything being done by our government to rebuild this trust? Thank you.
I think President Obama said during his campaign and has said since his inauguration that he is determined to put America on a strong course. That doesn't mean just on national security. It means engagement. It means to return to our core values as a country. I was in the government at 9/11, and it was a tremendous trauma for this country, for this government, unlike any we had ever seen before. The reaction, some people might say, was over the top in some areas, but when you wonder about other threats, and in the aftermath of 9/11, we didn't know what we were facing in terms of WMD attacks, other cells that might be out there, and in an overabundance of caution, implemented a number of security measures and activities that upon reflection now, we look back after the heat of the battle has died down a bit, and we say they were excessive. Okay? Reasonable people can disagree about that. What President Obama is trying to do, though, is now to take into account and which he does every day, optimizing the security of the American people. Every day he gets up, he wants to make sure people are safe and secure from a number of different areas: health, education, and national security. We have to get this balance right. And I'm here today to try to explain and describe how the administration sees the way forward. This is going to be tough. It really will. Because, let's face it, a lot of people will have very ignorant feelings and will have prejudices and discriminations that we have to erode. We have to constantly work every day. But this is not something that's going to be like a light switch that you can switch on and off. I think we're making a lot of progress as a nation. I don't want us to slide back. And I was very concerned after the attack in Fort Hood, as well as the December 25th attack, that all of a sudden there were people who went back into this fearful position that lashed out, I think not thinking through what was reasonable and appropriate. And so I think we have to maintain this dialogue to ensure that we don't go back to an era when we look at people with automatic suspicion, at the same time that we have to do things for our security. Let's go over here this time. Out there. Hand up. Yes. I think someone's coming with a mic.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. My question is more based around the youth involvement. I'm sorry, my name is Samuel Mansouri. Thank you for your remarks. And my question relates to the youth involvement with President Obama's administration. One point that he made, the president, is to go to Cairo and talk to all of the Muslims in the Middle East about what they can do to better the situation. But what about the youth in America?
In fact, I spent about 3 hours yesterday with President Obama talking about a number of issues with several other people from the White House. And we talked about the issue of global engagement and strategic communications, and emphasizing the point, we all did, that there is a global engagement strategy and requirement, but we need to make sure that we have the domestic engagement as very much a part of it. And we talked about my address here this morning and the need to continue to ensure that we're able to interact, because not just reaching out to you for the sake of our own sort of homeland security and the well-being of our country, but you and people that are represented here have your relationships and contacts and travel frequently overseas. You need to be ambassadors in your own right, in your communities, in your schools, and as you travel and interact overseas. As I said, this is hard, but it requires constant attention. And as we talked before with some of the leaders of the community prior to my remarks this morning, talked about the importance of resources being dedicated to it. And also, I will say one other thing on this issue. After 9/11, our country really responded remarkably to the attacks on 9/11. And we did amazing things to make this country safer. And this country is a much less hospitable environment for terrorists to carry out attacks here. And that's why we've been very fortunate, because of very hard work that was done. But we can't just be focusing on the finding terrorists and extremists and stopping them from carrying out their attacks. If we think about the process of extremism and becoming extremists and terrorists, it's a continuum. It starts somewhere. I like to think that everybody is born into this world with a certain amount of innocence to them. And unfortunately, sometimes as they go through life, forces of evil will bring them down a certain path. We cannot have just the counterterrorism, law enforcement, homeland security communities focusing on this, because then we're just looking at the end of the continuum where terrorism and extremism and radicalization has already taken firm root. We have to go upstream. We have to look at those issues. And we are trying to engage more and more with behavioral scientists and other things. What leads a person to join a gang? What encourages a person to start that process toward becoming a violent extremist, whether it's with a religious banner or something else? We need to address this in our systems and our societies and our communities. And so therefore, I think what we're trying to do in the Obama administration is to reach out. And the people that are here today from the various parts of the U.S. government are those representatives and those ambassadors that hopefully it's going to take root. You know, just like the movement that led to President Obama's election, I like to think that we're going to feel this common shared responsibility for addressing our security issues. For here. Can you wait for this? Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for taking my question. I'm Amir El-Hajj Khalid Saman from Cleveland, Ohio.